Components. So how to design controlled components, I explain. So we will learn some examples with that. So we will see how to use these controlled components and how to handle them in real time. With some real examples we will see. But for that, some important questions you need to handle. So first thing, what is controlled component? Controlled component is a component which changes its behavior, presentation, functionality according to the data passed from the parent. Parent will pass data, and according to the data, it can change its behavior. That means here in interviews, what type of questions will come? So first important questions in interviews what they ask related to this concept. First question answer we already know. So how to transport data from parent to child, from parent component to child. How to transport data from parent component to child component. So the data of parent component can be transported to child. We have two techniques. It depends on situation. So the answer is if child component is a controlled component. If child component is a controlled component, then you can use props. Props means properties. You can use props to carry data from parent to child. If a child component is a controlled component, then you can then you can use props to carry data from parent to child, which already I showed yesterday. So yesterday what we learned, how to transport data from parent to child. But in interviews, the question is like, if the child is not controlled, it is an uncontrolled component. That means it will not accept any properties from you. Then how you will send data to the child, right? That means if child is not a controlled component, means it is not designed to take any data from you, but we have to pass the data into it so that we can use the data. But it is not designed for accepting data, but we have to pass the data. Then we have a technique for that. So if child component is not a controlled component, then you can use context. You can use context for carrying data from parent to child. If child component is not a controlled component, then you can use context for carrying data from parent to child. So we can use context for carrying data from parent to child. This question, this question can be asked in another way also. For example, means what is this context? I will show. We will learn about that now. We'll see that. So this question can be asked in another way also. Suppose you see almost majority of React interviews, you will face this question. Remember, 90% of React interview questions will be related to state management. Not only React, any web technology have to test you on state management. You are a Java developer or a .NET developer or a Python developer, you are related to web development, means your main job is managing state, transporting data, handling the data between requests. That is major work of web technology. And for that, every technology have different techniques. Almost all technologies use similar techniques with some variation. So that is the reason carrying data, state management are the major topics to crack interviews. Majority, even in Angular, React, everywhere you will find questions related to this topic. So here, how they can ask this question in another way is usually, suppose this is one parent. This is parent component. And this is a child component. This is child component. This child is level 1 child component. In that child, another child is there. That means in that child, another child is there. This is at level 2, a child inside child. Now, generally, so we have the data in the parent. This is the data in the parent. This data from parent you can pass to child. At level 1, you can pass, but you cannot pass this to here. Not possible. That means the data can be carried only at one level. Inside the child, there is another child. This parent cannot pass the data. Why it cannot pass the data? Because the child at level 2, its parent is this one. Its parent is that. Who has to pass data? From here, you have to pass the data. You cannot directly pass the data from outer hierarchy. That means from what we have to do, parent to level 1, we need to send data. From level 1 to level 2, you need to send data. This is called, in software technologies like React, this is called props drilling. In many React interviews, you will face this question: what is property drilling? Property drilling, what is it? How you will explain? You understood the point? How you will explain what is props drilling? Props drilling is the mechanism of carrying data from parent to child at a multi-level hierarchy. Understood? Multi-level hierarchy to carry data to the last child in the hierarchy. We need props drilling. That means directly from the main parent, can you send to every child? No. From parent to level 1, from level 1 to level 2. This process is props drilling, and we should avoid this. We should avoid this. That means many times what they ask is how to prevent props drilling. How to prevent props drilling? You can prevent props drilling by using this context. So context allows in two situations. You can pass data to parent to child even if child is not a controlled. It is an independent one. It is not a control, but you can pass data to it using what context. If the child is present at several levels of hierarchy, also no problem. You can pass the data directly from parent to child at any level of hierarchy without props drilling by using which mechanism? Context. By using context. We will see today how to work with it. We will see both examples in real time, how to use this properties and how to use context, right? Let's see. So this question is asked in another way. So what is property drilling? What is property drilling? That's another important question. So it is the process of carrying data from parent to the last child in hierarchy. In hierarchy of multi-level components. It is the process of carrying data from parent to the last child in hierarchy of multi-level components. Parent data to level 1 child. From level 1 to level 2. From level 1 to level 2 child. Like this. Just rough concept here. That is props drilling. So people call this props drilling. So here, how to prevent props drilling? How to prevent props drilling? Or how to carry data from parent to child at any level of hierarchy? So the answer is by using context context API. People also call as context API. By using context API, you can do that. So many times they may ask you like, what is context API? Context API allows you to configure a memory. What is context? I will explain now. We'll see that. Right. So how we can manage this? What is this context API and all? Actually, it's not new. People who know little bit of full stack web designing means back end, front end. They know about this context memory. Actually, what is this context memory is just roughly. For example, let's say here we are having a page. This is a server. Okay. Now, what is the concept is generally, so in the server, we are requesting one page. So you are having some page. So this is like, so page one. This is page one. So we are having another page. This is page two. We have page one and page two. Generally, web server is a HTTP server. You know, HTTP server is a stateless server. So HTTP is a stateless protocol. You learned about that. Stateless protocol means it cannot remember information between requests. So what happens is you requested page one. When you requested page one, what it will do is it will allocate a memory. It will allocate a memory for page one. So in that memory, I'll just give here, yeah. It allocates a memory for page one. In that memory, this page will be handled. All the data of page one will be inside this memory. All the data of page one will be in the memory. Now you finished using page one. You are navigating from page one to page two. Then what will happen is when you are navigating, the memory allocated for page one is deleted. Server cleans up. Once you finish a page, the memory allocated for page deleted. Now, when you requested page two, then what happens is server is going to allocate another new memory for which one? Page two. So now page two doesn't know what happened in page one. Whatever data you stored in page one is not accessible to page two. It's not accessible to page two. So what happened in page one is not aware. Page two is not aware of that. Page two cannot access anything because it's deleted. That means the memory allocated for page one is deleted and page two is there. That is one problem with web, and but actually it is good for web because server manages its memory very well. It will not use the memory if it is not in usage. Automatically deletes after it finish. That's good for memory, but that is big problem in real world because we need data to be carried from one page to another. So what happens now is actually when you are having page one, a memory is allocated for page one, and if you are not navigating out from page 1 to page 2, if you are accessing page 2 inside page 1, if you are accessing the page 2 inside page 1, then what is the point here is whatever memory is allocated for page 1, it can be shared to page 2 also. That is possible only when page 2 runs inside the context of page 1. That means every page have a context memory. What is the purpose of that context memory? It can be shared with any page that runs in the context of same page, not outside. If the page 2, you removed the page 1, navigating outside page 1 to page 2, then memory is deleted. But if you are accessing another page in this page, how this is possible? Have you ever seen this in your designing of learning of HTML, JavaScript anytime. You might have used it when you learnt iframes. You learnt iframes, huh? You know iframe. In HTML, you have an iframe. What an iframe can do? It can render any another external content into the page. You learnt Ajax calls. By using Ajax calls, you can bring the information of one page into another. Using Ajax, you can do that. You can access a page inside page and you can do. But the memory of the current page so can be shared with another page if it runs inside the context. So what is context memory? Context memory is the memory allocated for a parent which can be shared to its child. Parent, it can be shared to its child at any level of hierarchy. At any level of hierarchy. That means if that child is present in another child, no problem. Parent can share data. Without property drilling, you can share the data from parent to child at any level of hierarchy. That is possible with the context. But remember, context means the component should run inside the parent. If it is outside the parent, it cannot access the data. So, what is context memory? I hope everyone understood the point. So, what is context? Actually, in web technologies, context is the memory allocated for a component. Context is the memory allocated for a component and shared to child components that run within the context of parent, that run within the context of parent. It is accessible to child at any level of hierarchy. It is accessible to child at any level of hierarchy. It is accessible to child at any level of hierarchy. Context is the memory allocated and it is accessible to child at any level of hierarchy. Let's see how it is possible. Now, what we have to do is we have to create context memory. We need to create context memory and we have to use the context memory. So, two levels are there. What is that? I will show you. Let's go to our project. And in this project, oh, this is not okay. So here, first, just for your understanding sake, I will add a component called context demo. Okay, context demo.jsx. Context demo. First, I will give example here, a simple syntactical one. Then we can try another. So this is context demo. Okay. So the context demo is empty currently. Okay, so I will go here. I will add container fluid padding for BG dark text white, and this is a parent component. This is the parent component. That's the parent we are having. I will create another component, export function. So this is level 1 written, and it will have a heading some level 1. Okay, so this is level 1 and we have level 2. This is level 2. Okay, level 1 is having container fluid and padding for BG dark, BG danger, text white. Okay. Now this is level 2 container fluid, and we have padding 4. So BG warning, text danger. Okay. Now see, what we want to do is in this parent component, we are accessing level 1. So level 1 is inside parent. Inside level 1, I am accessing level 2. Level 2 is inside level 1. Then level 2 is inside level 1. So like this, we have a multi-level hierarchy. Now what is our requirement is from parent, any data must be passed to both of them. And remember, level 1, level 2 are not controlled components. How you say that they are not controlled components? If they are controlled components, they must have props. They must take some parameters. They are not. So they are not controlled components. They are all what? Uncontrolled. Uncontrolled components. So now how we can transport data from parent to child? That means now see here. So we have a constant user, set user, temporarily use state. We have a John. Remember, this is a local state and it is accessible only to this component. The local state is accessible only to this component, not to the child. That means now here I can use that user. I can use that user. It will display that here. But I cannot access it in level 1. That means level 1 cannot access this state. State is local. Then how we transport it? How we can transport from one level to another? So we have to handle a context. So first step is generally some web technologies have a built-in context memory like JSP, ASP, .NET related. So these technologies have built-in context memory. That means whenever a server side page is created, automatically a context memory is created. But here we don't have a context memory. We have to create context memory. First, if you want to use a context memory, you have to create context memory. So how to do that? First step, globally, you have to create user context. So user context is equal to, we have create context. We have create context. We have to create context. Default is null, means we don't have any value. First, we have to create a context memory. Recently, from React 18 and 19 version onwards, they made mandatory of context name to be in title case. Every word first letter caps. Earlier, we don't have that rule, but now they made context name must be starting with uppercase. Component name must start with uppercase. context name also must start with uppercase letter compulsory. Earlier we don't have that rule. Now this is the context. Okay, now after creating the context, you have to define the scope of context. What is the context name? Context name is what? User context. You have to define the scope of context. So inside parent, we have to create user context. This is the scope. In this user context scope, this level 1 is working. It is working. That means remember, inside the context scope, which component you kept, that component only can access the data. That means in a parent, there can be two child or more. But who can access the context? Which is inside the context scope. That means you can keep child component outside the context scope also. You can keep outside the context. It is present inside parent, but it cannot access context memory. Who can access context memory? The component which runs inside the scope of context. Inside the scope of context. And very recently, actually earlier, this context uses a provider. Provider is responsible for locating the value in memory, get the value and send it to child. But now in latest versions, they removed this provider. So this context is having only a value. Earlier we used to have a provider. So now we are having a value. Through value, you can send the user. That means now what we are doing from parent, we are passing data into the context. Through what? Value. Earlier we used to have a provider. Now they change it to value. So this value, user value, now who can access? Level 1 can access. How level 1 can access? You can't pass here. Why you cannot pass here? We cannot pass there. Why we cannot pass there? Because it is not a controlled component. It is not expecting any properties. It is without properties. Then how we can send the data into it? So what level 1 can do is go to level 1. This component can use the context. How to use the context? You have to create a reference let. Context is equal to use context hook. We have a hook called use context. This uses which context? User context. That means from user context, whatever data is coming, it can be stored here now. Now just that context data you can display here. Level 1 also uses here context. That means in level 1 context, John is there. That means level 1 can access that value John. How level 2 can access? Simple. Go to level 2. Here also you can create a context is equal to what? Use context. Which context? User context. And here also you can use the context memory. That's it. You can access anywhere. That means now here is level 1 is sending data to level 2. No, level 1 is not sending data to level 2. Directly data is coming from parent. Without property drilling, we can transport data from parent to child. That is possible with the help of context. At any level of hierarchy, any child component can access the context and use it. I am just sending a string. You can send any type of data. It can be array, object, or it can be any JavaScript primitive, non-primitive type. I will implement in a real example and I will show you. We will design one real world example using this technique and you will understand clearly how where they use it correctly. So first point, how the context is going to work. What is context? You know now how to handle the context. So here we will see context API. So first point is you have to You have to create a context memory globally. You have to create a context memory globally for parent component. How to do that? Import, create context from React. Let context name is equal to create context and null. So next important is you have to configure context scope. You have to configure context scope in parent component. That means context name and value is equal to some data. Here, child components. So one small note is the latest context uses a value instead of provider. If anybody knows old versions of React or their companies are still using an old version of React, they will find a context with provider instead of value. Okay, now it is value, not provider. So, next point, child components can access the context memory with use context hook. They can access the context memory with use context hook. We have a hook, use context. All hooks and their purpose I will give in one place later. First, we will use them situation wise. So what you have to do, let context is equal to use context and the context name. Context is nothing but contains val data from parent. Right. So we will see interactions, how we manage the interactions. We'll create one example. So, but let's see, suppose send, sending data means you can do like this. In the parent, suppose I'm having a text box. Input type is text, right? So we have a function handle change. It should get the value and the set user e dot target dot value. So I'm using on change, handle change. That's nothing but initially the data is empty. That means we don't have any data here. I'm not configuring any data. It is empty. Now from parent, I am sending the data. It will goes everywhere. That means we are transporting data from parent to child. I will show one real example and we will implement it. For example, you see Amazon. When you see Amazon, in Amazon, this is a header component. And below, there is a section component. From header component, I am passing data like mobiles and search. In the section, it is going to show them. That means here data is passed from parent to child. What is this child component is doing? It is showing all the data that you passed in search. You may feel like it is one page. No, it is two components because header component is fixed. Header is always fixed, na? It will not change. Below it is changing. It will have filter, searching, sorting, everything. That means actually, so means in this design, what they have is in this design, yeah. So let's take this. So in this design, what they have, let's say, in this design, they are having the header. Actually, this is the header component and this is the section component. There are two components actually. Now data is passed from the header to child. That means what they are doing is they are transporting data from here to here. And it is collecting the data and it is displaying. That's what we achieved now. And remember, this we can achieve in two ways. How? One without context. But without context means this component must be controlled. Na? It is expecting some data, you pass it, it will use it. Without that context, this is okay. It's working fine. The challenging is now from child component, how you send data to parent. Now what happens is when I click add to cart any mobile, then it will show one number, two number. That means from child to parent. It's not possible generally because you learned JavaScript closure. What is closure in JavaScript? The outer block members are accessible to inner, but inner block members not accessible to outer. Then how? That means how we can transport data from child to parent. That's very famous question for even experienced people, right? Not only here in technologies like Angular, everywhere, this is the same question. How to transport from parent to child, child to parent. That's very common. Even in JavaScript also. That's what they ask. What is closure? In a closure, parent outer function members are accessible to inner, but inner members are not accessible to outer. How we can make them accessible? How it is possible? So how to transport data from child to parent? That is the challenging one here. Let's see how we can do that. So this is another question. First, I will give you, we will implement this, we will design this, right? After understanding the concept, we will design. So I will copy this example. This is example of context demo dot what JSX. This is context demo related example. Okay, let's see here. Let's see another question. Where, what is it? So that is number 5. Yeah. In questions, another important question is how data is transported from child to parent. How data is transported from child to parent. How we can transport that from child to parent. So how this is possible is, for example, let's say, yeah, how this is possible, just a technique is, actually, this is the parent and this is the child. Parent to child data can easily come, but not default. For that also we need a technique to implement, which we have done. From child to parent, how we have to do is, in the child component, you have some data. So I need this data to be accessed in the parent. Then what you have to do is, it's not accessible anywhere, it is not accessible. Generally, it's like what means little bit scientific, means like, suppose this data is in parent, it is like a gravitational force. Gravitational force means you drop anything from the top, it will come down, it will go to the child, there is no effort required, right? You drop anything from the top, it will go from bottom, it has to go out. If you try to send this, you need to send with a force, you need to send that. That means you need a trigger. That trigger will kick out this data outside its area. And that trigger is called as, generally we call that trigger as event. That means what is an event is, actually no events, but this is a component related event. This is a component related event. That means this event is actually the child event. Child component will have a event. What this event can do is, this child component event can trigger the data. That means it can send this data outside this child. Now, in the parent, there must be somebody ready to catch the data. Whatever data comes from child to parent, in parent, there must be someone ready to catch the data and they should use it. That means how data is transported from child to parent. Every child component can have a custom event. It can have a custom event. That means on click, on change, like that. You can have your own events. You can build your own events. I already told you that all events are derived from a base called synthetic event. That means all events that you are using in React are not actually DOM events. They are all created events. Like that, you can create your own events. You can create your own events. Through that event, you can push the data out and they can catch and they can use the data. Let's see how. That means how data can be transported from child to parent. Parent to child, child to parent. Parent to child already we know. Now let's see how we can do that from child to parent. And what is the answer in any technology that is possible by using what? custom events. We call them as custom events. How data is transported from child to parent by using custom events. By using custom events. So child component can have a trigger that carry payload to child, that carry payload to parent. Child component can have a trigger that carry payload to parent. It can carry payload to parent. How this is possible? Let's see how we can define that. So for example, I will create a simple hierarchy here. I don't need all this now. I will clean up all this. Just I will create one parent and child. Okay. So yeah. So BG Tarka. Okay. This is parent component. This is the parent component. Okay. Now let's create a child component. Export function child component. For your clarity's sake, I am creating all in one place. In the next level, we will create separate files. So return, and this is what? This is child component. Okay. Now you can see this is the parent and the child component. We have parent, and inside the parent we will access child component, and child component will have something like bg danger padding for text white. Okay, it will be like this. Now what we will do is, so we want this child component to have some events. That means every component can have its own events. If you want events, then the events are defined like an object. Child component can have some events. Events are defined like an object because you can have multiple events. Because on, click on, change on, blur, so many events we can have. So you saw formic component. Formic component is having events like handle change, handle blur, right? Here, what are the events? Suppose I will give the name as on child click. This is our own name. You can give any name. Traditionally, I am maintaining the same standard like camel case. Your wish, you can give anything to this name. This is a custom name, right? On child click is an event name. Okay. Now what should happen? In child component we will put a button, class btn warning. For this button we will write some event. How to write button event? Function handle button click. Okay, on button click. So that means we have to write on click handle button click. Now what we will do is on the button click here. So this event will send a custom event. It will trigger the custom event. That means what is the custom event name? On child click. Into that we can pass some data. Into that we can pass some data, any data that is JavaScript. That means number, string, boolean, anything. Suppose I am passing one string message, hello from child. Am I right? That means what is the event name? On child click. When that event will be triggered? That event will be triggered when they click the button. On button click they will trigger a custom event. That means one default event is triggering a custom event. We need one default event like on click on change. This default event will trigger the custom event. Custom event will send the data. And observe carefully, in parent child component Now it is having an event called on child click. That means the component that you created is having an event called on child click. Event needs a function. So we will write a function in the parent. What is the function name? Handle child click. I am using like this. Handle child click is the function and it is having event argument. Okay. Now you see here on child click, it should point towards handle child click. That means what happens now? You know that this is an event handler. Na? Event handler have an event argument E. It contains the data coming from the child. That means this child event on child click. Actually, on child click, I will point that here. Okay. Let's point this little bit smaller size I am giving to make you understand. Yeah. Now what happens is when user clicks the child component, when user clicks the child component, what will happen? The data will come from the parent. Am I right? The data will come from the child and it is going to pass the data into this component. It is going to pass. That means you can access the data by using what? E. What E contains? E contains this event argument. Na? And what that event argument is having? A message. It is having a message. That data we can collect here and we can use it. So what I will do now, I will just put here the data. So that means here we will put constant msg set msg is equal to use state. I will put waiting for data from child. Just message I am giving. And that message I will give here. I will give here msg. And what should happen on set message? It should send E. Remember, it is not e.target or anything because it is our own event. Our own event don't have all the properties. Our own event is having only data. Whatever data is coming from the child, we collect the data through event argument and we will use the data here. And see what will happen now. This button should have a name. So here we put a name send. You can see that is the name. See, waiting for data from child. When I click this button, what happens? It sends the data there. That means we are transporting data from child to parent. The red one is a different component, black one is a different component. From child, you are sending data to parent. From parent, you can send data to child. That already we done that. So that means you need a trigger. You need a custom event. By using an event, only you can pass the data. You can send the data. So from child, you can any type of data. Here currently we are sending only text. Later I will show you different type of data how we can do. That means I can send an object. Object contains a title. So title as hello from child something. It contains some cities. So cities is an array. Delhi. So Hyderabad. You can send anything. Now what is this event argument? This event argument is having an object with title. That means you can see what it is going to do. It is waiting and send. It will get that title. What else? You can send anything. Suppose I say console.log e dot what? Cities. We are collecting cities also. That means you see now in the log, inspect, you check the log. Here you can see this is loaded. When I click send, the data will come. We are transporting data from child to parent, parent to child, and child to parent. How it is possible? By using custom event. How do we define custom event? This is important. So I am writing here configuring custom events. How to configure the custom events? What are the stages? First point, configure a child component with custom event. How to do that? Function, child component, and it will have event name. Second point, child component. Child component uses a default event. A user say synthetic event locally to trigger the custom event. To trigger the custom event. That means it will be something like this: function, child component, event name, we have a function. This is handle local event. On that local event, this event name can send some data. Just syntax I'm giving. Child component uses a synthetic event locally to trigger the custom event. So this is custom event passing data. Right? Right. So now next what we have to do, you can access child component inside parent with event handler. That means we have to use child component and event name, handler name. This is actually parent handler name. This parent component will use a function E. What this E is, E contains data from child. So that is how a parent handler can access the data coming from the child and it can use it. Now, this is one example. I'm just adding the same context demo JSX in that file. I'm updating this. This is example of parent and child, how we can transport the data. So these are very, very popular in interviews, right? So many more are there related to state management. So what you learned is how to transport from parent to child, child to parent. So how to transport from parent to child if it is a control through properties, not controlled through context, right? Now we will try to implement same like Amazon. That means we will try to implement this in real time example. We will create some real time examples with the same context that we'll see on Monday. So Monday you can do one thing. Offline people, you can bring your laptop so that hands on we can try one example. I will show in the class. Simultaneously, you can try immediately with me. Online people can try online. You can offline people you can bring here so that we can try one real example using this scenario and hands on we can check that so that I can check are you able to achieve that or not immediately. So we can check that. Monday we will practice that. Right. Monday we will continue one hands on example using this. Okay. Right. Yeah.